All right, well, I'll go ahead and get started. Hello and good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all doing well wherever you are joining us from today. I would like to welcome you to today's KBS Finance and Banking Young Alumni panel. My name is Shelby, and I'm the Alumni Coordinator here at King's Business School. We are so honored to have 4 young alumni with us today who will be sharing their experiences and insights into career opportunities in the field. I'm also happy to introduce Dr. Leone Leonida, Reader in Economics and Finance, who will be the chair of today's event. Just a quick note on the format. The event will run for approximately 1 hour. We'll have a welcome and introduction from Leone, where he will introduce the speakers, followed by a panel discussion. So if you'd like to ask any questions, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we will take 15 minutes at the end to get around to as many as we can. I'd also like to remind you all to put your microphones on mute to avoid any background noise while the panel discussion is on. So that's all from me. Thank you to everyone for joining. Thank you to our speakers, and I will now pass it on to Dr. Leone Leonida.
Thank you guys for being with us. I am Leone. I am the director for the MSc Banking and Finance, which is now one of the largest MSc in London. And I am also deputy director for the MSc Asset Pricing and Economics and Finance at King's Business School. It is a pleasure. I keep working with students since my very first day at King's as a researcher. I am developing statistical mechanisms that are able to individuate whether there will be a systemic banking crisis in future for the economy. And I am also trying to study the brain drain effects of the Brexit upon the UK and the migration dynamics across the EU. It is a pleasure to be here. As I said, we have 4 people that are willing to discuss the experience they had at King's and the experience they are having in London and the difficulties they had in finding a job. However, it's best to state this at the very beginning. These 4 people are brilliant students, and they have a winner in the competition for finding jobs, in the hard competition for finding jobs. In London, we have Alex here, Aline, Gonzalo, and Sparsh. In a second, I will be giving them the word to present themselves, to tell you what they did at King's, whether they found the King's important for them to boost their personality, to be mature, and to find jobs. So the entire experience they had at King's did help them in boosting their employability, so to say. So the person I know more is Gonzalo, because I was teaching him at King's College. Now he's helping us also as a teaching assistant, and he's doing a great job with us as well. So maybe we begin by surname, and so the first is Gonzalo himself. So Gonzalo, please, maybe in 5 minutes, you explain your experience, and then we will go with Alex, Aline, and Sparsh. Thank you, guys.
Sure, sounds good. Well, thank you, Leone. Good afternoon, everybody. So very brief, my name is Gonzalo, and I did the MSc Finance Asset Pricing with Leone taught me the econometrics module, the quantitative finance module. Obviously, I was part of the cohort, similar to Sparsh, Aline, and I think Alex as well, that we graduated during the COVID pandemic. I graduated in August 2020. My dissertation, I focused on doing a qualitative analysis on gender bias in finance, with a focus on the private banking sector. Regarding my day-to-day today and my current role, I'm a senior analyst, so I'm an analyst 2, to give you a perspective, at a small investment bank boutique here in London. It's called Alphier Capital. And to give you a perspective, which I'm sure quite a lot of people here will know, Alphier spun out. We did a MBO of a previous bank called Exotics Capital, which mainly focused on the emerging markets. So my day-to-day, I mainly focus on the commodities. So that goes from the simple soybean agriculture to the most complex oil and gas deals. We work on various types of deals, from simple debt and equity capital financing to M&A, IPOs, sub-series A's and seed rounding financing. As a senior analyst, my day-to-day mainly focuses on financial modeling, and that includes financial statement modeling, oil and gas, project finance, trade finance. That has been my focus today. And then also, Aline, Alex, and Sparsh will be talking about the same, obviously building books, teasers, data room, etc. But obviously, if you're more interested in the commodity sector, that has been my focus. But we have also spun out and we have focused on, I have crypto as well. I'm starting a crypto deal very soon. I've done quite a lot of transactions as well in the edtech space. But yeah, I think that will be my introduction. So I'm thinking that Alex is next.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for having me on the call, Leone. So my name is Alex. I studied international management at King's. I started in 2017 and like Gonzalo graduated in the middle of the pandemic, but in 2021 as opposed to 2020. So at the moment I work as an analyst one. I just started 2 months ago at Goldman in the global markets division, where I work on a cross-asset sales and multi-asset sales and trading team, which I really enjoy, but it was kind of a long path to get here. So at King's, I was rejected kind of my first 2 years of spring weeks. But then because I was on a 4-year degree doing international management, I did a placement year, leveraged my placement year at a tech startup to go do a middle office role at JP Morgan, worked really hard there to get the return offer, but knew I wanted to be in markets. So then turned it down, sent out a lot of applications and luckily landed here last summer. Worked hard throughout the summer, got the return offer, and just started full-time in January. So my day-to-day is probably a little bit different than Gonzalo's and I suppose of any of the other speakers in one IB. So less of a focus on things like data room or financial modeling, more of a focus on understanding what's happening in the market at the moment, research, and then because it's a multi-asset team, just understanding what's happening across different asset classes and how to communicate that to clients and how that could be affecting them. Still pretty new to the team. So most of my day-to-day at the moment is just kind of helping more senior people on my team manage their relationships, manage kind of trades, things like that. So feel free to kind of ask me anything about sales and trading and I'll try and give you an answer.
You are on mute, Aline.
Right, I think you can hear me now. So my name is Aline. I am currently an M&A analyst at Canaccord. I am in the tech team, so I specialize in all the technology or tech-enabled transactions. And when I was at King's, I studied international management, so same as Alex. But I graduated the year before that. So I graduated in 2020. During my time at King's, our degree was 4 years. So my year abroad, I spent it in China. I went to Beijing. I went to Shanghai, did sort of an exchange and a PE internship, and then came back for my final year. In terms of what I currently do, I mean, it's all the sort of M&A faff. So, I mean, we do sort of assist in the whole transactions. We have quite a small team. So at our firm, analysts do pretty much a bit of everything and ranging from, engaging with clients and building any materials with clients to sort of, doing any evaluation work and pitching, of course, and any business development as well is on us. And I guess a little bit of, I think Leone asked us to speak a bit about how our experience at King's, helped us get where we were. I think for me, King's really gave me the opportunity to get involved in a lot of activities. And I think this really helps when you interview, showing that you were involved in sort of, King's life, and you weren't just there in the library studying, but you were also engaged in other stuff, really helps you sort of set yourself apart. in the interviewing process. And also showing that you have quite a bit of international exposure. I think in London is quite valued by employers. So anything you can do in that sense really helps. And I think that is it for me.
Thanks, Aline. I think all of us come from very varied backgrounds. So I was an undergraduate student studying business management. I was the class of 2020. And I think very similar to all of us here. So I am an investment banking analyst. I'm a senior analyst at Deutsche Bank. I started right after I finished my degree in 2020. So it's been, almost 2 years now. And I think it's been a very, very interesting experience, starting in the pandemic with work from home and, just trying to take in everything that you heard about IB, long hours and, work. But coming from the experience that I had at King's, I did a lot of activities. I was engaged in a lot of societies. I was engaged in a lot of things with the business school, as well as academically. So I really wanted to pursue a career that would give me, constant engagement, asking for a lot, but that's how I ended up in IB. I am also I was an international student, so I come from India. So obviously I needed to look for jobs that would give me sponsorship, which, for people going into banking and finance, it does, limit us to all the bulge bracket brands. And you really can't apply to, smaller banks or smaller PE houses. So that's something that we have to take into account. But I think as per the application process, I actually missed out on the spring internships, which really pushed me to get a summer internship with the same team that I'm working with now at Deutsche Bank. So I work in the leverage finance team, which is the team that works on all the PE deals that you see in the market. So the private equity firms are our clients. We kind of give them financing to go ahead and do these deals. Very, very interesting. Had a great summer experience and converted into a full-time offer and started right after King's. We are happy to elaborate and answer any questions based on my experience further in the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much all for your brief introduction and interesting introduction. You can tell how different your life is and it was while doing this student, even if you only have 4 people here. The first question I have for you all may look strange, right? Did you think of doing the role you're doing while you were studying? Or it was most like a random effect of your study? Did you plan it? Or were you thinking, oh, look, I want to do this when I grow old?
If I may jump in quickly now, I didn't. So to give you my background as well, before working in investment banking, I did management consultancy. So I worked for a company called B Finance, which, to give you B Finance in a nutshell, they assist institutional investors, so pension funds, insurance companies, to kind of choose the right fund manager in the various asset classes, from hedge funds to infrastructure funds, etc. So no, at first I was thinking of going back there, obviously keep my knowledge in the private equity sector and perhaps jump straight into the buy side. But then obviously COVID happened. B Finance had a hiring freeze, so I couldn't go back, unfortunately. So I had to think on my toes and start applications. And that's how I stumbled upon Alphier Capital, which was a pretty lengthy process with a financial model presentation, etc., which I'm sure everybody on this call have gone through the same process.
Yeah, I'll just elaborate. I think after my first year, I did an internship with EY in audit actually, and did an investment management internship. And after doing those 2 experiences, I kind of knew that, yes, I'm inclined towards finance, but I really don't want to do accounting-based things. Which kind of prompted me, the next best thing is let's apply for investment banking internships. So that's how I started researching. I actually went to almost every bank's networking event and, these insight days that these banks hosted. So throughout my second year, I visited these banks, spoke with a lot of people, actively networked, and that kind of gave me a sense of where I wanted to be, and reassured me that this is the path that I want to take. This is what excites me when I talk to these people, when I meet these people, when I go to these offices. And that's how I decided, I wanted to do investment banking. So really focused on it, and got into summer kind of reinforced that this is exactly what I was looking for, and this is what I want to do full time. And that's how I ended up doing it full time. So I think networking and like knowing the feel of the career and the place, and talking to people pursuing those careers, like obviously you are doing now, being a part of this panel, that is super, super important in kind of helping you make an opinion.
Alex, maybe?
Yeah, actually, if I could just agree with what you said, what was said beforehand, in terms of at least networking for me, it was huge in understanding kind of the personality types that different people had, like across different roles and functions, whether that was like IB, sales and trading, asset management, Like you notice there is a bit of kind of a cultural difference, not just across banks, but then also across roles and the people it attracts towards them. So what I found was really useful with networking was less so referrals, because I felt like a lot of the big banks and the bulge bracket banks, it was harder to get the referrals there, or the referrals didn't really matter. It did matter a lot for kind of boutique applications, but more so just that you understand how to really speak to these people about their jobs, their careers, and become more comfortable with having those conversations and actually trying to sound interested. So I think that's probably the number one thing for like interviews. If you're reaching out, you're networking, you're being proactive, and you can have like interesting conversations with people, then it just kind of flows into an actual interview. When you do get one, you get an AC or something, you know how to speak to these people. Maybe you've already spoken to their colleagues and you get a good fit for it, if that makes sense. And then in terms of whether I thought I would be here in sales and trading, I don't know. I didn't really have necessarily any expectations. I felt like it was a bit of a random application cycle, in the sense where I wasn't necessarily sure if I was going to get what I wanted or not. So I wasn't getting my hopes up too high, but very happy to be here. And honestly, looking back at it, very good personal fit. So yeah.
Thank you, Alex. And now Aline?
So for me, I was applying a bit everywhere, and to be fair, I was applying for any jobs. I was applying for consulting, I was applying for corporates, I was applying for banking. And for 4 years, all my banking applications were rejected. I guess a lot of you know that story. And so at this point, I think for me, I was like, oh, maybe, that's not where I belong, and that's fine. Like, there's plenty of other stuff to do. So then I think I was on the final stage with Terra Firma, which was private equity firm. And then I had a couple of also deal advisory roles in final stages, but also some consulting roles. But that was right when COVID hit. So everyone froze recruitment. Was a fun time. And then, I started applying really for anything there was, and considering, small firms and whatnot. And then eventually one firm came back to me, proposing me a M&A tech role. It was a really small firm, but I said, it's going to be a good experience. And I accepted it. So the point being, I wasn't sure I wanted to do M&A, but, I had the opportunity at this point and I decided to go for it. And something else that came about that I think is really important to emphasize with this is that some people enter, even if you want to be in a bigger firm later on, some people enter through bulge bracket and all that stuff. But that's really not where your applications end. There's plenty of good smaller firms that are still really good, have really competent people. You're going to learn a lot. You're probably sometimes going to get even more experience that will allow you, to later on go to a larger firm. And that was the case for me, because after a couple of months, I started getting approached by a bunch of recruiters. and joined Canaccord like 9 months after I had started my role in a smaller firm. So yeah, I think that's important to sort of keep in your head, that your journey doesn't end at, at your Goldman Sachs rejection.
Thank you, guys. This is important, right? Because usually students, let's say, especially if young, coming to London, they have a lot of energy. They put a lot of energy in their study, and they, of course, they have some job dreams, right? So, however, their dreams, they have an impact with reality. And usually the application process is far from being easy, right? So when you look for a job, it's a job in a sense, right? So maybe you want to tell people listening now, what was your experience with the interview? Aline has introduced that. So if I understand well, Aline, you went through many applications, right?
Way too many.
Okay, do you mind giving us a rough number?
In my final year, I would say, and that's just final year. You have to bear in mind, I did them every single year. At least, 160, like, I think it was almost close to 200. And yeah.
Okay, Aline, thank you. Yes. And so in a sense, the message you want to give to people listening is that it's not easy, but it's not impossible, right? You need to find your way, what you are good at, and to be able to and ready to take opportunities coming out. Gonzalo, Sparsh, Alex, do you want to add anything to the difficulty going through applications?
Yeah, happy to add. I went through so many applications, like I'll echo what Leone said, about just an absurd number, like 100 or something. I was applying to kind of like every bank I could, because I knew that you just have to give it your shot. Otherwise, you're never really going to find out. And because there is just a certain degree of randomness to the process, and that you can't be sure that you're going to hear back from like some certain type of bank or for a certain type of role, you want to hedge your bets, right? Instead of ending up with nothing. But I would just recommend applying to as many places as you can, but making sure obviously your apps are strong. And then just like something of note is like when I interned here over the summer, like the head of prime brokerage was seeing me coming early. So he asked me how many applications I did. I told him the number, and he looked back at me and he was like, yeah, I sent out 60 when I was applying, heard back from one of them. Now you see where I am. So point being, just like shoot out applications. It is a numbers game. With quality, obviously, but it is a struggle. I think a lot of people had to go through it, and it does kind of suck, but keep your head up and you'll probably be able to learn something.
Yeah, I think I agree. Definitely, it is a numbers game. You have to apply as many places as you've heard of, you haven't heard of. Do your research, it was very helpful for me to keep track by creating an Excel sheet, which I think most of us do. Just to keep track, where you are in the process, which tests are coming up, which interviews are coming up. And it's not that if you apply to, 100 places, you will get 50 offers. You usually end up with like 1 or 2 places. And even out of that, there's just one that you really would like to go and one role that you would want to do. I think one thing that I personally do believe in is don't scatter yourself too much, or don't stretch yourself too far that you kind of forget or get lost of what you're really looking for. So I knew that I wanted to be in investment banking, and I know that at least that was separated for me from going into consulting. So I did not do too many applications in terms of going for consulting firms as well as investment banking or asset managers. And I understand that sometimes you have to shoot your shot. But if you're focused on one thing, you really can put your energy into preparing for technicals, or preparing your applications, or networking, or like deep diving into a particular sector, which is what I really focused on. And sometimes that approach might help you much better. So I did 50 applications just for investment banking, extensively networked, extensively spoke with people in the field, learned only the kind of technicals that are required for these kind of interviews, and definitely a fair amount of luck played into, getting my application selected at the right place. But definitely don't stretch yourself too much to just, be write about everywhere and then end up knowing not to do what you should be actually doing in the end. So yeah, that's all from my side.
And yeah, just to wrap it up, echoing what Aline, Alex, and Sparsh said, yeah, just make sure that you keep a track record, because obviously as you apply, please do not lose track, because in case, imagine you applied to, I don't know, to a bank 2-3 weeks ago, they get back to you and you completely forget about it, that you applied for it, and you don't even know the role that you applied for. It doesn't really show like a very positive impact whenever you go to the first interview, because as Sparsh said, they might ask you anything. They might ask you why you're interested in the job. You need to know the specifics of the key tasks that you're going to be doing. Obviously, you need to explain what you've done in the past or at King's that you can perhaps apply to the current workspace. Obviously, technicals are important. And I'm not just speaking about how to build a DCF, LBO, or the accounting. Also, when you apply to a specific, I don't know, team or job sector, like for example, I'm very oil and gas infrastructure and mining, you need to know what is going on. Like for example, today, obviously, the big thing is that oil has hit 105, and I think it's going to hit 110 in the next maybe today or tomorrow, depending on how the Russian thing evolves. But apart from that, my experience with applications, as Sparsh said, just keep a track record on Excel. Treat every single application or every single bank as unique. So do not just say because it's Goldman, you need to prepare 50 times that another application. I think every interview, it will be equally intense, it will be equally challenging. And at the end of the day, those interviewers will put you on those challenging positions just to obviously understand who you are. And at the end of the day, they want to be able to work with you and understand you better. And then that's the interview process, but mainly as well, a lot of banks, and perhaps Aline, because you went through it with Canaccord, they started to do quite a lot of like technical, so case studies interviews. So in my firm, for example, we do a financial model and a presentation, which I think are two of the key tasks that you're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. And so, yeah, you should have that aspect kind of like developed. But again, whenever I have looked at models from candidates and interns, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like at the end of the day, we need to see that you are able to build a model and you're able to back it and obviously present it in a good, nice, obviously well formatted, no spelling mistakes, because obviously attention to detail is key, not just for the big banks, etc. At the end of the day, you are putting out that presentation to investors, to the clients, etc. And it can be really embarrassing when they spot a spelling mistake, etc.
Thank you, Gonzalo. There are a number of questions in the chat box that we want to go for first, and then we continue the discussion, right? There is someone asking, if you want to help, how do they choose, in your opinion, between investment banking and consulting? Here, maybe Gonzalo has an experience.
Yes, so I had both. In consult, how do you choose? Okay, well, finance is a very broad sector. Again, you have asset management, buy side, sell side, wealth management, etc. But when picking between consultancy and investment banking, you really need to know like what you want in the next step. So obviously investment banking opens a lot of doors, and maybe like most of the doors to most finance sectors. Consultancy, you do develop quite a lot of skills, but it might not open quite a lot of doors, like perhaps in the buy side. If that's something that you're really envisioning to get into private equity, hedge fund, usually picking investment banking opens those doors after 1 year, 2 years working in the industry. So you need to be careful with that. And then also the kind of work-life balance. I think we're going to get those questions coming up soon. And I'm not sure about Aline, Alex, and Sparsh, but yeah, that's a skill that you really develop during your time. And obviously keeping in touch with your friends, family, perhaps trying to take a holiday, which some firms actually force it right now. Some people might ask, Alex, have you ever taken a holiday at some point? But I think soon. But yeah, I don't know. It really depends what you like. What skills you want to keep developing? What is your next stage in your career that you want to develop? And then perhaps if you're looking into the buy side, obviously investment banking is the door. But again, you don't have to jump into investment banking just because your friend is doing it, and also because perhaps salaries are going up, etc. Jumping into investment banking is a very big decision. And when you get into the sector and you start doing the job, you will understand that, yes, it's tough, obviously high reward, and there's also very high risk as well. But I'm not sure if Sparsh, Aline, or Alex have something else to add on that.
Sparsh, Aline, Alex, do you want to add something on the choice between investment banking and consulting? If you have had any experience while looking for jobs?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sparsh.
I think not experience as such, but having just continuing on what Gonzalo said, I think definitely lifestyle is a very big difference that I've seen in terms of my friends who are in consulting and people who jump from investment banking to consulting. It does make a huge difference. And as Gonzalo said, work-life balance, you kind of have to learn or you have to give up on. I think at this point it doesn't even exist for me. So you definitely have to kind of do a self-analysis for yourself. What kind of work environment do you see yourself in, and what kind of risks you are willing to take, and what kind of things are you willing to give up initially in your career to kind of get to where you want to. And I know it is very hard to say 5 years down the line I want to be in PE or I want to be in hedge fund, because you really want to figure out what you want to do now. So kind of get experience. I think summer internships and springs are a very good way to get this experience. If you think you have a particular inclination towards one, then you should really do an internship or a spring week or just network in general with people in the industry to kind of find out, does it really live up to your expectation or what you thought of that industry, and then make the move. But definitely two very, very contrasting fields in terms of lifestyle. So I'm sure, Aline can definitely elaborate on that.
Well, I think actually, I wouldn't just say working hours, because to be fair, I think it really depends. I think you can join investment banking firms that are not as bad in terms of hours. But I think first, I've been always strongly advocating that first you need to understand whether this is really something you'll be passionate about. And because it's easy to say, oh, money is there and, go there. But the truth is, if this is not something you like and you hate your life going there every day, waking up, it's just not worth it. So I think the truth is the nature of the job of banking and consulting is slightly different. I think consulting, you will probably do a wider variety, like not a wider variety of things, but kind of, because in banking, like the deal process is always sort of the same. It's not the same, and you're going to do a lot of different stuff, but there's a sort of flow, of what you're doing, and, like what happens at each deal stage, etc. And sometimes the deal sort of can happen in a different structure or in a different way, but you'll sort of be, every time you'll be sharpening certain technical skills or certain soft skills, but it's sort of, you're gonna do something concrete, and you kind of will know more or less what it will look like. Whereas consulting, I think like you'll do a much wider variety of projects. And I think it's a bit, for me, the way I view it is a bit less hard skills and maybe just, a bit more soft skills, although that needs to be caveated because investment banking is a lot of soft skills. When a client calls you and you pick up the phone and they're politicians, these guys, they're always in companies, there's always politics, and you have to manage them. That's a lot of soft skills. But basically in conclusion, what I would say is that I think banking is slightly more sort of a little bit more technical, and you probably will, know a bit more how the processes go. Consulting is a little bit of a wider variety, so a bit less. So you'll probably become less of a specialist, although I understand there's points where people specialize, but I don't know if that makes sense and if it's helpful, but yeah.
All right, thank you very much. And there is plenty of questions really. So thank you very much all for participating this much. I can answer very rapidly a couple of them. What is to Dishab? What is the average class size of the MSc Banking and Finance? We usually aim at 150. To be honest, on the last two cohorts, we ended up with more, about 200 to 220. But probably as the COVID is disappearing, we will be going back to normal and teaching full on campus. Okay, so that's the first answer. The second is about what we do at King's to help employability at the postgraduate studies. We do have a career dedicated person, which is Rupinder Morrow and Danny Wilkins. And the two guys, this group of people, they help you preparing your CV. They help you preparing with your interviews. But in my opinion, what matters more is a number of parallel activities we have into the MSc. For example, if I recall well, MATLAB modules, Stata modules, R modules. What else, Gonzalo? The finance trading program we have, and then the
FTP, yeah.
The FTP, some King's investment fund activities, which has not been easy to have during pandemic, being a relational activity. However, we have a number of ungraded activities that they help you enrich your experience in your CV and making you an expert, okay, of a particular field, especially while you develop a dissertation, okay? Some questions. There is a question about, if I recall well, is about as an international student, would boutique firms not provide a work sponsor for me? I'm not sure they will. Okay, I don't think this is a question we can answer. Do they?
Depends on the boutique.
Okay.
Leone, just
ahead.
as a quick example, my first firm where I worked at was a boutique, and it was really like small. You know, it's not like a massive firm. They said they don't provide visas. I have an Indian friend who did an internship there, and they liked him so much that they ended up giving him a visa.
Okay.
And so did they for other people. Yeah. And for example, where I work now, they give visas. There's a crunch on investment banking talent at the moment. So they're really becoming much more flexible, especially if they really like you.
Yeah. This is an important point, right? This is true for me as well. I mean, it is always difficult to find a position and a place. But if you look strong enough, if you look mature enough, and if they really want you, they make it possible for the job to happen, because it's not easy to have a war for talent, it is called, through the Europe, right? Also, Germany is very attractive. For some places in Spain are attractive. The US is an attractive place. And so actually it is clear that there is more competition in London, because it is London and New York where finance is developed, really. But having said that, if you are confident on your thing, on what you know, and you know well what you know, and what you know is useful, I agree with Aline. They will help, and they will find a way out. Yes, this is my experience. Okay, there is an interesting question about network, guys. What do you think about network? How did you network, and whether network is important?
Happy to.
Sorry, Alex, you go first.
No, go for it.
I think so. For me, networking was definitely pre-COVID, so a little bit different, because firms were actually, and I think a lot of these companies have started doing it now. I know Deutsche is starting to host a lot of in-person events as well, even on-campus events. So a lot of that pre-pandemic networking is coming back. But I think it's very, very useful that if you go onto these websites of different banks, it's and also the King's Career website, actually, that was super helpful for me when I was looking for these networking events, because I used to keep a daily check on like what kind of networking events are coming up. It kind of lays out what banks are holding inside days, what banks are holding these kind of panel events, and you can just go register on them. Some of them have an application process, very, very simple. You just have to submit your basic information and CV, and then they will give you an invite. But I would say just actively apply and actively register for all of these events, because it really helps going and understanding and meeting people that you usually cannot meet through your network or through your, extended network. And you kind of, some of these banks actually host them in very nice restaurants, and some of them host it in their own ballrooms and stuff. I know Deutsche does it in their own auditorium, so it's really nice to actually even go see those spaces and see how it looks like, get a feel of the office. But then I think even in your personal network, if you know people who are in these industries, you can have a more candid chat, telling more about yourselves and taking a one-on-one session. I think even during these kind of panels where you meet people and you kind of connect with someone's experience, or you kind of connect with where somebody's career is at, and you want to ask them further questions, or you just want to keep in touch with them, it's very helpful to just connect with them on LinkedIn and then follow up, or just drop a message and say, hey, really loved your opinions in this panel or in this chat and would love to have a conversation. Most of the people that I've reached out to are very receptive to these things, so they eagerly come back. Some of them would even call you for a coffee chat, and these things go in the long run. I've seen that obviously now, being in the kind of job I am, I cannot take out time to do networking outside of my role. So I think it's very important that you develop this space during your university years, so that all those relationships definitely for me have continued outside of university. They help you find your mentors, they help you find people that you might be interested in, careers that you might be interested in, or companies you might be interested in, and it's just super helpful to have them.
I think what I would have to add to this is that I know we at university we always have these networking events and whatnot, but I think one of the important things to bear in mind is that your networking doesn't stop at the walls of university. And actually, a lot of the networking that I found the most sort of useful and actually the most true in some ways is, going to certain sports clubs or things like that, because sometimes you end up meeting, maybe an MD or a director from a bank or whatever. And I think by doing this kind of stuff, you connect a little bit more, because it shows that you have the same interests. And sometimes, it's a bit overwhelming if you're there in a networking event and people just pass by and give you 20 CVs. You're kind of like, well, they're all the same to me, not really, but some people stand out a bit more. But, I receive messages on LinkedIn every day asking me to refer people. And I'm like, well, why should I refer you? We haven't talked yet and we haven't really connected. Whereas if it's someone I met, at the sports club, and they're like, oh, by the way, and, we're sort of we're making good friends and all that stuff. And then they're like, by the way, could you please help me? Then I would be more keen to help them out. And I think a lot of people are sort of keen to help out in these environments. So yeah, networking doesn't just stop at networking events. Go out and, go to different places and just chat with people.
There are a lot of other questions, but before we move into that, I do have a question for you guys myself, right? Now you are a sort of an insider, so you know where better than others, where there is a demand for people. So suppose that you want to give an hint to someone, what should they focus upon? In which sector would you focus upon now, given the current environment?
I'm going to let Alex a chance.
I know that's difficult, right?
Yeah.
This is why you are here.
I'm going to let Alex a chance.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. One thing that I kind of add on it, sorry if you can't hear me, I think it should be working, is that I think at the graduate level, there are still a lot of people applying. One core thing is that just I think banks are a lot more kind of accepting of everyone from any degree to a certain extent. And so the effect of that means that it becomes a very generalist role that a lot of people can apply to at the entry level. But then the moment that you hit the entry level, when you start looking at analysts, that's where there's a huge kind of drain of talent, because a lot of people are just leaving. There's people quitting their jobs 6 months in, a year and a half in. And then teams ultimately just want to be able to bring on someone who's experienced, that they can onboard quickly. So I definitely think that, and this is going to be much more skewed towards boutiques, but if you have good technicals and you put the work into, just knowing enough about accounting or finance or just how to put like some slides together or model, not even the high level stuff, but just show that you can do it relatively error free and learn from that, then you could definitely impress and probably be able to try and secure like a grad role as an analyst. That I think that would be a really key thing.
If I may jump in and just following what Alex said, there's huge demand for analysts. I'm not sure if Aline and Sparsh will agree, but there's a huge demand. There's a big gap. A lot of analysts have left, and I'm not talking just about the boutiques in my case, but also the big bulge brackets and the medium tier banks. Quite a lot of the analysts, I think, going back to the office has not been a very positive impact, and quite a lot of them have finally made the jump onto the buy side. So it's a very, very good opportunity to jump into the investment banking side, especially at the starting analyst level. But now jumping onto the master's students, before any of them ask me, because I used to be a master's student at King's as well, and some of them may not have an internship, etc. Yes, it will be difficult at first to jump straight for an analyst role at, Deutsche, or even the boutiques like Schroders, Lazard, etc. At the entry level, because they sometimes ask that you have some sort of experience in investment banking or private equity at internship level. But in my opinion, you should focus perhaps also in off-cycle internships. They are great opportunities, and most of the time, because obviously when they hire you, they really like you and they want to give you a chance. Most of them, they end up being a full-time role. So I will perhaps look at a lot of the off-cycle internship opportunities. That's how I got into my role today. It was a 3-month off-cycle, and then was meant to be 6. They cut it short to 3 months. I ended up being full-time by my 3rd month at Alphier. But quite a lot of the boutiques and quite a lot of the investment banks, I know for sure Deutsche and I think Goldman, they do sometimes off-cycle, but a lot of the big bulge bracket banks as well. But regarding sector specific that Leone mentioned, I can only speak about my sector. So natural resources, industrials, and commodities. There's a big demand. Oil and gas is going up. I think it's going to stay at 100. So we do need people there. But also in the commodities sector, if you're aware, obviously the battery minerals, there's a big chip shortages and supply chain, etc. So there's going to be a huge demand for battery minerals. And I'm not only just talking about graphite and lithium, but also nickel, cobalt, tantalum, etc. And there's quite a lot of greenfield and brownfield mines that are going to be developed, not just in Europe, but obviously in Africa, South America. So if you're obviously interested about those sectors and you want to learn more, which they can be quite technical heavy, just because it's oil and gas, this mining, etc. Obviously, you can ask me questions later or send me an email about it. But yeah, I think that will be my 2 cents on the current demand.
On this, I am a theorist, so I don't work outside the uni, right? I've been consultant. My feeling is that we are moving toward, of course, an ESG attention from the policymaking and from the markets. This is quite obvious. Close to that, I would also say something about regulation, isn't it, right? Because the UK is leaving, has left the EU, and there will be a role for the next 10 years for people understanding regulation and being able to adapt those to the new conditions of the market. And of course, I would say big data, machine learning, something very technical. So these 3 things, together with what Gonzalo said and also Alex, may make sense to think about. There are many questions. Okay, so it is very difficult for me to pick which one. So I go for one for Alex, if I recall well. Alex, very direct. How is the work-life balance at Goldman? Is it you working there?
Yeah, it's me working there.
Okay.
I think, look, it's good. I think like anything, it is so team dependent that you can't really just make like a broad phrase and then about it. And then it's also like sector dependent and just like what your team's doing at any given point, what kind of work they're doing, what the clients are requesting. So I think it's always going to vary, and you probably hear more nightmares about the top end of the range from just like some particularly busy teams. I mean, I think everyone generally works like a long time, but I don't think that's just unique to this bank. And to be honest, I think my team has a great culture. There's absolutely no FaceTime culture here. And that probably is because it's in sales and trading, but I even think among like certain teams in IBD, it's the same. So I wouldn't have anything negative to say around the hours. Now, I wouldn't, go into kind of any like front office financial and think that you're going to not be working a good amount, because the learning curve, as I'm sure everyone else on the call probably reiterate, is really, really steep. Like I definitely still feel like there's a certain degree of drowning to how much you have to learn. But I mean, the first 6+ months are you just trying to get up the curve so that eventually then your workload can start to come down. So that's what I would say. Hours, not terrible depending on how you view them, but just have to put them in to get good at what you're doing.
All right. So the final bunch of questions I would ask myself to understand what you think about yourself, guys, for the 4 of you, is what you want to do in 5 years from here. I know that looks like a question from an interview panel, right? So, but it is interesting to tell our friends there, how do you need to develop continuously? Okay, so what you want to do in 5, where do you want to be in 5 years? Did you think about that?
Anyone jumping in on that? I'm happy to say I think 5 years is a long time from now. I think a lot of people kind of get the perspective like they want to do something sell side for like 2 to 3 years and then jump to the buy side. Think, see how you actually enjoy like your job and your team first, and don't just like go into what will be likely be your first full-time job out of uni with expectations of jumping from it. I think that's a bit short-sighted because you may really enjoy what you're doing. Alternatively, you may just like hate finance as an example. And odds are if you really dislike investment banking, then you're probably not going to enjoy going to a private equity fund either. And that's still going to suck for you. So let's keep an open mind about things. Try to enjoy what you can about them and then make decisions. But no idea for 5 years from now.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with what Alex said, that we should definitely, for people applying now, should not apply thinking about a 5-year plan, because, the kind of environment that we're working in and the way markets are today, things change all the time. And I think, jumping back to that work-life balance point, it also really depends on the kind of markets that we have right now. And if things are really blowing up, you always see a busy end of things and heavy end of things, which is what it has been since I personally started with my team, because, we work in the debt market and it has obviously been blowing up with interest rates being so low in the last few years. That being said, I think my 5-year plan really stems from, the kind of experience I've had in the last 2 years with banking, which kind of reinforces what are the good things that you like, what are the things you don't like, what part of the culture would you like to have in the next place that you go to. So I think I definitely see myself in the venture space, moving a little bit away from banking, but also seeing, staying close to finance. So yeah, something in the venture space, something, on the buy side, being an investor and putting in my own money.
Okay, thank you.
Don't get fooled by our honest answers. If you ever get asked this question in an interview, you should convince your interviewer you're going into the job because you want to become an MD in that job and stay in that job. They don't want to hear you.
For sure. You were born for the job and you're going to be here your time. That's the correct answer.
you have been dreaming that particular job in that particular company, right? Yeah, exactly. I agree. This is very similar. When we go for lecturer professorship, is very similar. I apply to King's because it's the best place and I want to be there because, wow, look at this, how good is it? Okay, that's true. By coincidence, in this case, this is also true. Gonzalo, anything to add here?
Well, yeah, similar to Alex and Sparsh, obviously it depends on your experience in banking. Again, banking is not for everybody. Yes, as we mentioned earlier, like you get paid a lot, but then you work a lot of hours, and obviously time management skills, which is one of the skills that Aline mentioned earlier, is kind of like the first skill that you start developing from day one. 5 years, yeah, after working for Alphier for a year and a half and experiencing Africa, which I got the chance of seeing that part of the world that I don't think anybody will perhaps get a chance at some point, because I don't think a lot of people will go on holidays to Angola or Nigeria, perhaps. But it was an interesting part of the world that I want to keep developing. And obviously looking forward to learning more about Tanzania and Djibouti and Tunisia in the next few weeks. So I have to travel. But yeah, at some point, perhaps I want to learn more about the buy side, jump in there. And after doing quite a lot of oil and gas, I think I've done enough harm in the world to jump perhaps into more the ESG focus and waste to energy and renewables. That is something that I'm very fond of. And currently I'm working on a transaction on waste to energy, which is fascinating, great technology. And again, it will also have a huge impact in the world. But yeah, if I could really pick or see, perhaps I'll stay on my firm and keep developing those skills. But obviously the buy side is very attractive, and that renewable aspect is something that is really attracting me to that part.
What I like about your answer, guys, is like similar to Gonzalo, is that you know that you can have an impact in the world, right? And this is something that King's helps developing. Being so international is so important, I would say, across the many universities you can have in the world. This helps raising up the way in which you think, in my opinion. There is a question that I was asked to ask that I forgot, and it is possibly the most important. What do you think about King's, in the sense, in your opinion, how King's has helped for your experience and in raising your experience and for your employability? This is the very last question, and then I'm sure, because there is plenty of questions in the chat box, I'm sure that we will be organizing another of these meetings, right, sooner or later. So people listening, stay tuned with us. Okay, so but now I'm curious to look at answers.
I'll jump in because I think I'm the only postgrad student from everybody, and I'm sure Aline, Alex, and Sparsh can give a more elaborative answer because I've been at King's for 3 years or 4. Yeah, I think at King's, obviously being a master student is a very short period of time that you can actually do quite a lot of activities in 1 year, and especially going through it with COVID was a tiny bit more difficult. But obviously King's help a lot, as Leone mentioned, with the careers department, etc. Obviously, there's a lot of students from so many parts of the world. are not grasping from the skills, obviously from the knowledge in the market, because quite a lot of the students in my master's, they have had previous experience in consultancy, private equity, venture capital. So obviously talk to your peers. Yes, it's my master's, I think we were 150 people. It's a lot of people, but at the end of the day, you're doing similar classes together. So really talk to them, take advantage of the networking events. So from what I remember back when we were face-to-face teaching in my first semester, Leone, you brought Howard Marks, which if I don't know if anybody knows here, but he's obviously the current CEO of Oaktree Capital Management, which was a great experience, great chance to obviously ask him questions currently, because just before that, they were going through the negotiations with Brookfield, as Oaktree Capital Management is part of the Brookfield umbrella. Then also take advantage of also talking to the undergrads who might have had experience in investment banking. I obviously got to know Aline and Sparsh through a careers event that we did, but also like obviously talk to them. There's still students, there's 30,000 students at King's. Obviously some of them have done investment banking, private equity. They can give you tips on obviously applications, or perhaps obviously, if we were students back in the day, Sparsh has done an internship in Deutsche. I can ask her like for tips and stuff. How was it? Do you recommend it? Which team, etc.? Because obviously she has the insights. So do obviously take advantage of that, obviously LinkedIn network, because whenever you search King's College, you can obviously Google and you can obviously search for Aline or Sparsh or anybody, but any other student as well. So make sure to take part. And then also important, take advantage of the club and events, the King's Business School, and then other events, etc. that are ongoing. Obviously, if you have you're fascinated about making an impact, there's obviously the Impact Investing Club, which they obviously organize events, chat, etc. But I'm sure Aline, Alex, and Sparsh have a tiny bit more to add, obviously, on the undergrad perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, it is a bit different because obviously in your master's, you get very limited time to, you have to study, you have to do your dissertation, and you have to apply for jobs. Obviously, there are some constraints to, how much you can involve yourself in. But try and take out time and do things, that interest you as well. Like not just, things that you think might add to your profile or might add to your professional self, but this is your final year in uni, so try to do things that you're passionate about. I know in a fair amount of interviews, they ask, okay, so what do you like to do outside of work, outside of uni? And you need to have very interesting answers for that as well. So even if it is from the perspective of developing that answer, I think it's just important to give yourself that downtime and maybe engage in some societies that you are passionate about, some sports clubs. You will definitely find, like Gonzalo said, you would definitely find some connections there, maybe some undergraduate students that you can connect with, and you have a shared passion for something. They might connect better. They might, help you with your applications. Plus, you just get to enjoy things. So definitely, try and make use of it. King's has almost everything that you want in one single place, from careers to societies to networking. So just make the best out of your 1 year.
Oh, thank you. So we finished, we ran out of time, and it is a pity, but I want to thank all of my friends here, Gonzalo, Aline, Alex, and Sparsh, for being with us. And probably we will be organizing another of these meetings. For sure, there will be a summer school in banking and finance, which we will be running in June, if I recall well. So I will be inviting people that is interested there, and also the 4 people talking today for sharing their experience at that time. Okay, I thank you very much, and I give the word to Shelby again. Thank you.
No, that's all for today. Thank you all so much for joining, and thank you to the speakers and the chair, Leone, for your time today. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for joining.
See you soon, guys. Thank you. Enjoy your life, and good luck for everything. Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.